Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
My name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, I have a question. Jeff.
Yeah?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Been pretty good. We talked last time about taking naps. I took one a little while ago, and I am very disoriented.
Right? They're like I feel like naps are just the worst. I don't like there are people who can nap and there are people who can't. And I guess there's people who can sometimes nap, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I'm currently filled with 2 full avocados, and I don't know if that was a good idea.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like...
How'd those get in there?
What? I ate them. I ate them, Gabe.
Oh, okay. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, goodness. So yeah, no, like we ordered, like we get our groceries delivered. Yeah. Not by choice, by necessity. And we were like, I want some avocados because I think they're delicious. And so we got avocados, but then, we're not the ones doing the shopping. So, and like, we don't get to pick out the ones that look the best. So the ones that we were given were like, you got to use these today. And, and there were 5 of them. And so like we got them in yesterday. So like we ate 2 of them yesterday. And then today I was like, I gotta at least use 2 more of these things. Otherwise they're just going to go bad. Yeah. And Skylar was also taking a nap. And like, I sort of looked over at her. I'm like, do you want avocado? And I got no response. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm eating these by myself. So I took some chips and like I mashed up 2 avocados, a little bit of salt, and just went to town on it. And like, you forget that's just avocado is just like mostly fat. Like,
it's mostly oil and stuff.
Yeah, it's mostly oil and fat. So like, my stomach is a little like, I don't know why you did that, bud. So
I've played a bit more VR since the last time that we talked.
Oh yeah,
I was having an issue because I kept having an issue where my headset kept losing track of where it was, and so it would like freak out, and I would like suddenly fall through the floor repeatedly whatever I was in. Yeah. And I haven't 100% diagnosed it. It seems to happen most when I'm playing graphically intensive games. Locations wise, I downloaded some new locations for some new environments for my Steam VR. The town from Zelda Majora's Mask is on there, like Clocktown.
Clocktown.
Just go around all of Clocktown. It's pretty cool. And then also almost the entire game of Super Mario 64.
So like all the levels too?
Most of the levels, not all of them, but most of the levels. There's no enemies. It's all frozen in time, basically. But still, you can go around the castle, and then if you go up to one of the paintings, there's like a little spot you can stand on that'll warp you into the level, and then you can explore the level.
It'd be interesting because there are games like this. There are VR games where it's basically like you're not in the perspective of the character. You are the camera. So like you are looking at the world and controlling a character, but like you're not, your perspective isn't the character's perspective. You are like the third person perspective of the character, of the world and the character. So like, I forget, there was like the Justin Roiland, or no, was it him? Was the Rick and Morty guys one of the Rick and Morty guys made a game that was like that, where it was a 3D platformer kind of a game, I think. But it was a VR game where you are in the, you're basically the camera. So Mario 64, to kind of introduce people to the concept of a camera in a 3D environment in a video game, because Mario 64 was one of the first games to have that. Yeah. They were like, the camera, they basically gave the camera a personality, as in it's a Lakitu, like the little cloud Koopa guys. Yeah. And it's like, it would be interesting to have like Mario 64 VR, but you're the Lakitu.
That would be kind of cool. Yeah. I know I have the Nintendo Labo VR set. I actually recently got rid of all my Labo constructed things because they were just taking up so much space, and I never did anything with them. Sure. But I still have the VR headset thing, because there are certain games where you can play them through VR. But when you do that, you're still playing the game as normal. Just you're looking at it through a 3D camera instead of through a normal camera. So like you can play Breath of the Wild, and it's still third person. You're still controlling it the same way, just you're watching it from a perspective that is 3-dimensional.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know, I should try to see if I can find any games that are like that, because that so far I've only played first-person stuff.
Yeah, and I need to get mine hooked up again so we can do some VR stuff together.
That would be cool to play some Phasmophobia or something.
Oh, right, that's right. Oh, no, I don't want it, but yes, we should.
Yeah. Also, Tabletop Simulator. I have that, and that is VR compatible.
Of course, yes. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I think together maybe me and you can find a way to do D&D in VR.
Sure. Okay, cool. Yeah. So VR, again, everybody go get VR. I don't know how much of that discussion I've cut out because we talked about that for, 15 minutes, but
wait.
All right. So Jeff, I want you to imagine that you have been you are in the Olympics. You're a finalist.
Oh goody.
Let's say you're the finalist in, I don't know, the pole vault?
Sure.
Or something? Sure.
I've seen that.
So it's time to go. You got to do your final thing to see if you win.
Right.
From someone who does not watch the Olympics. Do you have a D20 handy?
I do. I have a very fancy one that my friend got
awesome.
me.
Oh, so we did our Roll20 game yesterday, and I used my metal D20, and I put a big dent in my my dice tray.
Oh no!
It's fine. It's a 3D printed dice tray. It cost me like $1. It's
fine.
Right.
Okay.
It's still usable. It's just got a big dent in it.
Is that the Lord of the Rings one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I want you to give me a dexterity check.
Okay. So to try to get
maybe acrobatics or athletics, whatever. Just roll me a D20.
Trying to get the pole into the little slot so it can.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, a 17.
Ooh, good job. Okay. You can hear the crowd cheering around you with sweat dripping down the sides of your face, but you've got that powder on your hands that athletes use. You've got the pole in your hand. You're running. You can see whatever the thing is you're supposed to stick the end into, and you can see it. You're lining it up. You hear Obi-Wan say, use the Force, Jeff. And then you jam it in there, you feel the pole bend. It lifts you up in the air. You feel yourself flying through the air. You go sailing over whatever the bar is. You know that you've done it. You've succeeded. And when you land, do you know what you land on top of, Jeff?
What did I land on?
You land on top of the dragon's hoard.
Ow!
So today's magic item was submitted by Sean M. via Facebook, and the item is, I'm going to see if I can pronounce this right, the Discobolus of Myron is the name. A discus said to be used in the sporting games of the gods. This buckler/bracer combo functions as a shield, providing +1 AC, as well as being capable of being thrown as a weapon. This item does require proficiency in shields to utilize its defensive benefits. No proficiency is required for its attack function, however. As an action, the discus can be detached from the bracer and thrown as a ranged attack, so you can detach it and throw it as one action. The discus has a range of 60/120 and deals 1d6 bludgeoning damage. After being thrown, the discus will bounce about the space, returning to the thrower at the start of their next turn. During this time, the thrower's AC is reduced by the +1, so they don't gain the benefit. And then a little bit at the end, I don't know if this was supposed to be included, but I'll include it regardless. The name actually refers to the famous Greek statue. I thought about giving it the Xena Chakram weapon effect, I guess inspired a little by Captain America too. I might add in something for training to gain proficiency in this shield. I find downtime activities aren't always that interesting or useful, and getting shield wielding is surprisingly costly at a moderately armored feat. So, yeah, so this item, pretty simple. It's a buckler, like it's a little shield. It gives you a +1 AC instead of +2. but then as an action, you can throw it, and then it bounces around and comes back.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so as part of this, there is the little bit about needing proficiency in shields, but then also Sean felt that requiring like a feat or something if you didn't have that proficiency was a little much. So maybe letting the players gain that proficiency elsewhere.
I feel like I really like that idea, actually. Just like, I like the idea of a magical item coming like having a downtime activity coming with it.
Okay.
So like, it could be a magical item that works out the box pretty well, but you can also do a downtime activity to become more proficient in it and maybe get an extra ability or something out of it.
Sure.
That may be a cool way to do downtime stuff.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like for most magic items, if it does require proficiency, it's not out of the realm of magic to say that if you are attuned to it, you can use it. You can use it.
Right, yeah.
You have the proficiency.
But, and I guess like attuning is technically a downtime activity.
Yeah, kind of. But so the thing about this item is that it's less of a magic item and more of just kind of an item, which, that's not a bad thing. I think this is a cool item regardless.
Yeah.
If it were, maybe there is a non-magical version, which you do need the proficiency for, but then there is a magical version that you are proficient with it if you are attuned. And then, again, if it was magical, then maybe it also, deals extra damage or, gets a +1 or overcomes damage reduction or whatever. Yeah. Also,
or can bounce to hit more targets or something.
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say. The description given here just kind of says it'll bounce about the space and then return to the wielder. If there was a limit, if there was some sort of details on how many targets it can hit, if you could hit multiple enemies with it, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like you make one attack roll and then you apply that to, I don't know, up to 3 targets or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like with like chain lightning, it'll arc from target to target.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Both of us have played the game Hades, which is a very fun Greek-themed roguelike that came out a few months ago. Yeah. And in that game, one of the base weapons that you can get is a shield that you can just attack with the shield, or you can throw it, and it does do this. It does bounce from enemy to enemy and then come back to you, which is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a cool item. Like I said, it's not really a magic item, so use that opportunity to beef it up. Give it some additional cool stuff.
Yeah.
With it. But yeah, I would love to use something like this in a game. I would love to have a weapon or item or shield or whatever that is unique like this. Yeah. So use this and make something even better with it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he does describe it as a magic item at the beginning, but like,
yeah,
you could definitely like, I guess like the returning aspect of it. I don't know, but like a boomerang it can return, like that's a mundane item.
Yeah.
I don't
know. So anyway, I think it's a cool item, but I don't really have much else to say about it.
Yeah.
So I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Horde today. So once again, that was the Discobolus of Myron, submitted by Sean M. If I didn't pronounce that right, sorry, but you get what you get, I guess.
The Discobolus.
The Discobolus, yeah. So yeah, thank you, Sean M., for submitting that. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to submit magic items to the Dragon's Horde, or questions for our main segment, or stories for the funeral pyre or other segment at the end of the episode, which we talked about last time, how would they get those to us?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord.
That's correct. And before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away today. As usual, we're giving away a copy of Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2, courtesy of Crit Academy. Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 is the second volume of a product that I helped Crit Academy write. It's a collection of 25 character concepts, encounter concepts, monster variants, magic items, player tips, and DM tips. Tons of great stuff, tons of ideas, tons of cool stuff to read just for anybody who enjoys playing D&D or other tabletop games. Lots of great stuff in there. It's a great supplement. So, who is the winner of this great supplement today?
The winner of this great supplement is Jeff R.
Winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, Jeff R. And Jeff R. included an adorable picture of a turtle. with this. It did not get him any close. It did not get him a win any sooner. I think he's actually been on the list for a while, but
it's still
appreciated nonetheless. Yes.
Yeah, it's a cute little sea turtle, little baby sea turtle.
So Jeff R., be sure to let us know if you haven't gotten it in the next few days. If a few days go by and you still haven't gotten anything from me or from Crit Academy, be sure to let me know. Also, please leave Crit Academy a review so that they can continue to make good products with good feedback and get more attention as well. So that would be most appreciated as well. And a huge thank you to Crit Academy for letting us give away these free copies of this cool supplement. So, Jeff, if anybody else wanted to be like Jeff R. and they wanted to win a free copy of this great supplement, how would they enter the drawing?
They can enter by sending us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 in the subject line.
That's correct. And next up, I want to thank all of our wonderful patrons for helping make the show happen. Patreon's an online platform. You can pledge to donate a certain amount of money per month to the creator of your choice. We have a campaign at patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. We've got a few different tiers with outtakes. We've got a bonus podcast, Interpatron Conflict, once a month. We've got a monthly Roll20 game. As of this recording, we just played our Roll20 game yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. I think we had some fun stuff happen, and I gave them a few different ways they can go from here, so I'm excited to see what they do after next time we get back together. So yeah, we've got some cool stuff. Once again, head to patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. Take a look at the rewards and see if anything appeals to you. If you're able to help out the show and get some cool stuff in return, we would really, really appreciate it. And everybody who has donated to us is incredibly awesome. So big, huge thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
And then one more quick thing. Check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy, critacademy.com. Justin, Ian, and Austin make new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. Brute Force and Ignorance is an actual play podcast that I think is still going to be coming back sometime soon. Check out the Kind GM podcast, which is a podcast where one of the other content creators on the network has started giving DM advice. So there's some pretty good stuff on there. And check out D&D Character Lab, where Garen and Dan made characters every week and pitted them against each other to debate whose characters were better. Enough of all that. Let's get into some questions.
Our first question comes from Flash85 on Discord, and they ask, how do you feel about mechanical requirements for multiclassing?
Mm-hmm. They're bad. Next question.
No. Look, I understand them. I find them a little annoying. Although, however, in 5th edition, at the very least, they're not that bad. They're really not that bad. It just requires you to have at least a 13 in like the primary stat or stats of the classes in question. Yeah. Which is really not that bad. It's like there are some times when I'm creating a character multi-classed and like I'm like, oh right, I forgot to make sure that stat was, a 13 or whatever.
Sure.
And it can be a little annoying because like sometimes I like the idea of a character that's in a class that is, usually supposed to be strong, but I kind of want them to be this other thing instead. Mm-hmm. It gets more annoying when it's the ones that have 2 stats that they have to have a 13 in, or it's like I think fighter you can do strength or dexterity. I'm not sure.
Correct.
Which is like, okay, so like for fighter it has more than one, but you can choose which one. And then but I think for like ranger, you need like wisdom and dexterity or something. I can't remember for sure if that's the case.
So for anybody who's not familiar with how this works, if you're playing D&D, you're playing one class and then you want to take on the abilities of a different class in addition to the abilities you already have, you can do that. However, like Jeff was saying, there's a little chart you have to look on where you have to meet the minimum ability score requirements of both the class you are already in and the class you are going into. Most of the classes, it's basically just whatever their main score is. You need that to be a 13. However, fighter, you can have strength or dexterity, a 13. But then monk, paladin, and ranger, you need 2 stats. So monk is dexterity and wisdom. Ranger is also dexterity and wisdom. Paladin is strength and charisma.
Right.
So if you were a barbarian that is becoming a monk, for example, first off, that's a cool idea. Second off, you would need strength, dexterity, and wisdom all at a 13.
Right. Yeah. Which if you're doing like a point buy system, that's going to be difficult. And if you're doing a roll system, that's even more difficult because who knows what score you get.
Yeah. It'll either be really easy or really hard.
Yeah. As somebody who's built a lot of multi-class characters, like I don't really see there being any issue in just waiving that whole rule, at least in 5th edition.
Yeah, like what I was saying, I was joking when I said they're bad, and let's move on. Like, I can see the idea behind them. It would make a little bit less sense if your character multi-classed into wizard without, at least being moderately intelligent.
Sure.
However, I think that it's strange that you don't have to have a minimum stat of anything to be any class to begin with. If you're just a wizard,
right,
you can have an intelligence of 8, and you can still cast all the spells you want. In previous editions, you couldn't cast spells unless you had like an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma of, I think, 10 plus the spell level. So like if you had an 11, you couldn't cast second level spells.
Right.
That's been taken out in this edition, and I mean for better and for worse. But there's no requirement to be the class in the first place, which I don't think necessarily there should be. If you want to play a wizard that's dumb as a rock, go for it. You're not going to be effective, but it might be fun.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you have a build that you want to go for that does require multiple classes, suddenly you've got all of these requirements you've got to meet. And if you are playing in point buy, that can be very, very difficult. Having to have 3 stats out of 13 or higher isn't within the realm at level, definitely isn't within the realm of possibility at level 1. Of course, you're not going to be multi-classing at level 1, but you are then forced to put your feats or ability score you're forced to put your ability score increases into something just to meet the requirements for multiclassing. And I just feel like it's hamstringing something that is probably not going to come up very often anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Whenever there's some sort of a limitation like this, I feel like most of the time players, they're not going to jump through the hoops. They're just not going to do it.
Sure.
So if they don't want you to multi-class Paladin and Barbarian or whatever, they could just say you can't do this, which would be its own problem. Yeah. But rather than say you can't do it, they're saying you can do it. You just have to make it very unfun for yourself in the process.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm wondering if it's a balancing thing, but like, I feel like when they put in stuff that they don't explain why they're doing it, and I just assume it's for some reason they just want to balance it so that everybody's on the same level. Maybe some combinations are just too powerful, so they made it a little bit trickier to do so. I would like them to just spell that out, though. Like, I would want them to say that specifically. Like, we put in this rule. We put in these rules because certain combinations are a little bit too powerful. A little, maybe like a little footnote or something in the player's handbook to explain why that rule is there. I know that's a lot of work because there's a lot of rules that I have a lot of questions about that I'm like, why is this here? Like the whole melee attack, melee weapon attack, ranged weapon attack, that whole debacle, that whole
ranged attack with a melee weapon.
Right. I'm like, oh my goodness. If this is so important that it has to be all these ridiculous rules, explain why. Like, please tell me why. One could argue like, oh, it makes sense because if you're a fighter and you're going to become a fighter wizard, you should be smart enough to be a wizard. But like you said, you can have an 8 in intelligence and make a level 1 wizard, no problem.
Yeah.
But it's also like, if you are a wizard who wants to instead become a wizard fighter, if you have an 8 in your intelligence, you can't multi-class, period. You just can't. Yeah. Like, you cannot multi-class, so you can't change, like, your character can't pick up a new class. Maybe it's like,
shoot. That's a good point.
So like, they're bad at being a wizard. And so like, their story is, well, I'm a wizard, but I have an 8 intelligence, so I'm not very good. So now I'm going to become a fighter instead because I have a 18 or I guess 16 or 17 strength. So it's like, that makes sense. That makes sense as a character. It's like, you're starting off at like, if your build was, I want at one level of wizard and then go fighter the rest away because I want this one cantrip or something because it sounded fun. You know, I wanted to be a wizard I wanted to be a fighter with prestidigitation. That just sounded fun to me. But I want my stats to be more viable for the fighter part of it. You can't really do that. You have to have that 13 in intelligence. And so like story-wise, it makes sense. Like if you're going to allow a wizard to be a wizard at level 1 with an 8 intelligence, it makes sense for them to be like, all right, now I'm going to take a level of fighter because I'm no good at this wizard crap. But they can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. If you are, because story-wise, there are a lot of things that could make sense. If you are a bard that is really bad at being a bard because you have a low charisma, so you want to try doing something else, you can't. Within the rules, it is impossible for you to stop being a bard unless you put the points, unless you put your ability score increases into charisma so that you can get out of being a bard.
Yeah.
If you're a rogue who's really clumsy but really strong, sorry, you don't get to be a barbarian. You don't get to be a fighter.
You have to be a rogue you have to be a crappy rogue.
That's a really weird side effect of this rule.
Yeah.
Surely was not intended.
Right.
You had asked about it possibly being like balance based. And I mean, you know, maybe that's a possibility. Maybe during playtesting, they were like, you know, gosh, we found it to be really powerful. So we put a limitation. But then like Druid, for example, is one of those classes where a lot of people consider it to be one of the most powerful classes in the game because you can give once you get wild shape and such, you can basically just have an almost never ending source of hit points.
Right.
Druid only has one stat requirement.
Right.
And it's Wisdom 13.
I mean, and I've looked into multiclassing Druid, however, and like it's tough. It's tough because of that melee weapons attack, that because of that whole thing, because the way and like the difference between natural weapons and actual weapons, because a natural weapon is not a melee weapon.
Right.
It doesn't count as a melee weapon. It is a melee attack, but not a melee weapon. It's ridiculous. I've gone through this. But like, so like, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be a shape-shifting druid that is also a paladin doing smite with a bear claw? You can't do it.
Yeah.
You cannot do it because a smite has to be with a melee weapon attack, and a bear claw does not count as that.
Sure.
So like they again, that's why I'm like, okay, this must be a balancing thing because they don't want a bear paladin. Like, yeah. Right. So like,
then you just have to be. Oh no, sorry, I was thinking of barbarian. Never mind. Sorry. Go ahead.
a barbarian.
Because there is a barbarian thing that turns you into a bear, basically.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I think it must be some form of like balancing thing. But again, just say that. Just say that, because
I have a little sidebar saying like during playtesting we found that some of these were a little powerful, so we made it harder to do them or something.
Right. And that would solve the issue of when people want to make those little house rule changes. Like, because like in my mind, I'm like, this doesn't seem like a big deal. Go ahead, make that multi-class character without the stat requirements, whatever you want to do. And like it, in most cases, I feel like it's not going to be that big of a deal, but there might be that one combination that is like, okay, buddy, but like if they would just come out and say that, then people wouldn't be confused about that. Like people wouldn't go out of their way to make their house rule just to find out 5, 6, 7, 8 levels down the line that this is a way overpowered combination and we need to do something about it. And they're like, now I have to tell my player that he can't do the cool thing he's been doing anymore because it's overpowered.
Sure.
I feel like more transparency needs to come out when it comes to like actual balancing, and it might help people. It'll help people, it'll help GMs run the game, and it'll also help people like make new stuff, which maybe that's why they don't do it, because they don't want to give you their formula so that you can create your own content. I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, like How do I feel about mechanical requirements for multiclassing? I don't know. It's complicated, man.
Now, well, it should be said, 5th edition's requirements, every edition of the game has had some kind of multiclassing requirements. Maybe not 1st or 2nd edition, but they had their own problems in place of them. In 4th edition, I believe there were similarly stat requirements. However, I felt like 4th edition was pretty generous with the point buy and like what stuff did have requirements. So that was I feel like it was less of a problem then. But then again, multiclassing got you a lot fewer benefits than you do currently.
Right. In 4th edition, it was basically you just got like a feat or a series of feats that would like give you some extra stuff.
Yeah, like you took feats and then it was just certain abilities at certain points in your progression would be replaced with an ability from the class that you wanted instead.
Yeah.
But then in 3rd edition, in 3.5, those were arguably much worse. There weren't stat requirements for multiclassing. However, in 3rd edition, they had this thing called favored class. So the idea in 3rd edition was that whenever you multiclassed, you gained less experience.
Yeah.
Like if you were, let's say you were a dwarf cleric, and then you decided you wanted to start taking some levels of wizard or something. I think you would take like 10%. You take like a tax of 10% of your experience. Anytime you gain experience, you got 10% less because you had 2 classes instead of just 1.
Right.
Now, the way to get around this was that every race had a favored class. And whenever you had levels in that favored class, that class didn't count when determining how many classes you have. So for dwarves, the favorite class was fighter. If you were a dwarven fighter that started taking levels in cleric, then you didn't even take the fighter into account. As far as multiclassing was concerned, you only had the levels of cleric. So you took no penalty. Wizard or elves, their favorite class was wizard. Halfling was rogue. Half orc was barbarian, I think.
I think half elf was you got to pick it, I think.
Half elf and human, yeah, you got to. It was just whatever class of yours had the most levels counted as your favorite class.
Sure.
However, here's the thing: nobody used this.
Right.
Nobody I have ever played with ever took favored class or class in general into account. Nobody ever instituted that penalty to experience. It was just play your character, just level up however you want. I have never been in a group that ever used this rule.
I can't remember the last time I was in a game where we actually used experience. Like, I feel like the last time I physically remember counting experience was maybe Age of Worms or Eberron. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I know when I played 4th edition, we did use experience, but that's because, like, in 4th edition, it was very easy to build encounters just by being like, well, I want to give out this much experience. So this monster, and this monster adds up to that much experience.
Sure.
Boom. Go encounter. So, yeah, I don't use experience anymore. Like to be fair though, the games that I do play in are not regular games. Like, I got our Patreon game where I just periodically am like, oh, just level up. Because not everybody's going to be there every time. Yeah. Same with the library games that I would do. We never leveled up in my library games. We played like a year and a half. And we only leveled up when I decided, hey, everybody who's been coming for a while, come on in this time. Let's level you all up and you get to choose what abilities you're going to get because you've had this character for long enough. You probably know what you're doing by now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So experience is, I'm sure there are still a lot of people that still use it, but
like it's
can't
fun.
Penalize experience if you don't use experience.
Like experience points and gathering them. It's like, it's fun because it's like you're gaining points. It's like, you're racking up a score.
Yeah. You have something you can point directly to and be like, this is the progress that I am making. And that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It just like, there are, certain play styles and situations where it's like, it's not necessary. And a lot of times it can bog stuff down.
Yeah.
So, I'm also thinking of prestige classes from a 3rd edition.
Sure.
Where there were like, you would have prerequisites for the prestige class. The prestige class being like, it was 3rd edition's like, the way that in 5th edition you choose, what is it called in 5th edition?
Archetypes
what is that called?
specialization.
Specialization, is that what it is?
I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so when you choose a specialization for your class at like second or third or whatever level, you're kind of like, you're focusing in on one thing. Prestige class was not exactly like that, but it is sort of like it would be like a class that can build off of another class, but is kind of its own thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it in the past in more detail, but it is like, like it'll be a class that doesn't go from 1 to 20.
Yeah, it'll go from like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10.
Yeah, it might be only 5 or 10 levels long of a class, but the idea is that like, you get 5 levels of fighter and 5 levels of wizard, and then you can take the remaining 12 level or the remaining 10 levels of your 20 level character can be in like Arcane Archer or something.
Sure. Yeah, Arcane Archer or Eldritch Knight or something. And so then for those 10 levels, you are kind of both a fighter and a mage.
Right, yeah. So like in some cases, they might still give you bits and pieces of your previous classes that were required for it. But for the most part, you're getting, these new fancy abilities that are specific to having, both fighter and wizard. Or, they might be less specific. It might just be you need a spell casting class and a class that has and you need a attack value of this amount. So like, in order to do that in the least amount of levels as possible, fighter and wizard would work perfectly.
Yeah. I think as a general rule, prestige classes were meant to only be taken after 5th level, so it was very, very rare that you would find one that you could meet the requirements before 5th level. I can only think of one example off the top of my head.
What was that?
There was this one wizard class where, like, as a wizard, you choose your school specialization, and there was a prestige class where I think you could qualify for it at 3rd level, and you basically like super focused in that. You had to give up an extra school. Like an extra school was forbidden to you.
Oh, I remember that.
Then,
okay.
Yeah, it was kind of a broken thing. It was basically just what you were already going to do, but better. So it was kind of a lame idea for a class, but whatever.
Yeah.
But then the thing about prestige classes is that prestige classes specifically did not count as other classes for purposes of your your experience penalty. You didn't take an experience penalty when taking prestige classes. That was like, it's like, so the one opportunity where people might actually be affected by this thing, the rules already were like, no, just don't worry about it.
Forget about it.
We know you're not using this rule anyway, so.
Right, yeah, they just were like, whatever.
Yeah.
Although, like, I had a lot of fun, like the way I have fun with making multi-class characters, like I had a lot of fun making prestige class characters in 3rd edition. Like, I probably have a notebook still full of characters from back in the 3.5 days. There was one character, Steve, I remember Steve made, and then like, I think like well after we stopped playing 3rd edition, I like went back and like was like, I remember that character, and like I went back and tweaked it a bit to make it more like combat viable.
Okay.
It was like a changeling from Eberron. And it was like a mastermind something. It's like a spy master or something like that. I don't know. It was basically like a fighter that can use its intelligence and read people's minds to get an advantage in combat. And I was like, it was like multi-class is a lot of fun. Pathfinder 2nd edition has a really interesting approach to it. I can't remember if they have requirements.
Are you talking about like the hybrid classes?
Not Pathfinder 1st edition, but 2nd edition has like the archetypes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where it's basically you're swapping out things. So like at 4th level, instead of getting your fighter thing, you get this rogue thing instead, and it might be like a lesser rogue thing.
Okay.
I can't remember if there are specific requirements. I think there are, like, basically it's a list of feats pretty much that are like aimed toward a multi-class version of what you're making. And I think some of those specific feats might have like requirements, like you require this amount in your dexterity or something like that. But like in order to get like the initial, like, here's a little bit of rogue with your fighter, like feat archetype feat. I don't think there's any like real requirement for it. I'm not sure. Yeah, but in Pathfinder First Edition, there were like the hybrid classes, and some of those were really cool.
Yeah,
I remember seeing the word Blood Rager and thinking that is the most metal sounding thing ever. And so It's a sorcerer barbarian. So it's like your bloodline of your sorcerer, side, mixes with the rage of the barbarian side. And it's like, that's really cool. So yeah, multiclassing's fun.
Sure. I'm not super familiar with what the hybrid classes were like, but it seemed like a cool idea instead of something like multiclassing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just I don't think that the prerequisites for multiclassing are really necessary. I mean, it's just going to stop people from exploring something that they might be interested in. If you think that multiclassing is too powerful, then this might seem like a good trade-off, but I don't really think multiclassing is too powerful. Maybe in some weird corner cases.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I mean, every multiclass is already trading one thing for something else. So
right.
I don't know. If you like the requirements, all the power to you. But personally, I feel like I don't know. It's not interesting to me. I would much rather letting someone be a multiclass rogue that has a really bad dexterity, or a warlock who can't talk their way out of, couldn't talk their way out of a plastic bag or something. Like,
right.
I prefer the idea of the story idea of a character who isn't even very good at what they're supposed to be doing, let alone what another class is supposed to be doing. I wouldn't want to stifle the creativity that might come from doing that. Maybe somewhere down the line it would cause someone to be really powerful. I don't know. But I would have to see that before I would, do something like this. I feel like maybe this should be an optional rule instead of, instead of a default rule.
I guess thinking about it, it's like you could be multiclassing just for the proficiencies or something, and then just throw all of your stats into strength and constitution, and then just be like, you'll be a really good melee fighter because you have all the martial weapons and heavy armor, but then you have all the utility of, of like cleric and wizard or something like that. So like, I think there is some balancing to it, but I don't see it being that big of a deal in like 90% of the cases. Cause like, even with these requirements, there is still the warlock paladin or the sorcerer warlock builds that are like crazy powerful.
Yeah, I suppose,
but they're still perfectly legal. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah,
I don't know. So yeah. And what's in response to how we feel about them? I don't like them, but maybe you do. Maybe there's value to them. I don't know. I just feel like just let people play the game.
Right. Yeah. Our next question comes from Peace Joy Pancakes on Discord. And she asks, how do you motivate players who have no interest in loot, money, or simple magic items that just give them bonuses like a +1 sword?
Yeah. There's probably an easy answer to this and maybe a more complex answer to this. I'd say the easy answer to this is probably, talk to the player, find out what they like, what they want, and then use that to motivate them, I guess. That's less helpful of an answer than we could give, though. So
right.
So I don't know. Like, I mean, if they're not interested in loot, money, or magic items, okay, another simple answer is if it's the items that give them static bonuses that they're not interested in. There's lots of other items that are more interesting, and you can give them items. You could even give them homebrew items that are more interesting than simple +1s and so on.
Yeah.
But as far as like motivating the players, most of the game is kind of based around you get treasure, and then you use that treasure to go get more treasure, and so on. If you have these kinds of players, you might really need to kind of build the campaign more around the story rewards rather than the monetary or the gameplay rewards.
Yeah.
If there is a way that a character can earn some property as a reward for completing a quest, or if they can, earn the presence of like the contact of like a deity or a king or something like that. You might have to lean more heavily into those sorts of things, into the sorts of things that aren't easily given out as treasure. It's going to be more work, which kind of sucks sometimes. It is a lot easier to just be like, oh, you get 100 gold.
Right.
And then, you get a whatever that weapon you're using, you get a +1 version of that weapon. But if you're able to kind of see what it is that does motivate them, that they do get excited about, try and use some of that to motivate them, I guess.
Yeah. So usually, like, if somebody is motivated by magic items and stuff like that, they have something in mind of what they want. Like, they have a build for their character, and they want to make, like, they've already built their character ahead of time, like 20 levels ahead or whatever. And so, like, they're like, oh, it'd be really cool if I had this item and this item and this item.
Yeah.
So those people are really easy to motivate, because then you just, like, you give them gold so that they can eventually save up and get that item.
Or you just give them the item.
Or you just give them the item, or at least give them a hint that the item exists in the world that they can go and get.
Yeah. A quest to go get an item that's already on their list is like one of the coolest things you can give them.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody who doesn't necessarily have that, like, there's not an item that they're looking forward to, but they're still invested in their character. Like, you can, like, simple magic items like +1 sword, you can give to a character that's not an item. Like,
sure.
It is mechanically exactly the same, but story flavor wise, which is, might interest the player more, like that monk who is not really into material, like the player plays a monk who's not really into material possession, so wouldn't necessarily be motivated by a +1, club or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You could be like, oh, you are contacted by your long dead sensei who in your meditation is now training you to be a little bit better. You now get a +1 to your attack.
Okay. Yeah.
And like, yes, like technically that is sort of more powerful than giving them a +1 club, because the +1 club can be taken away. But as we've said before, taking away magic items is a bummer. Like, it's hard to do, and it's kind of crummy on the player. It's really crummy for the player's side to be given something and then having it taken away like that. Something that is added to their character sheet like that. Like, if it's a story thing, like they found the princess and then the princess gets kidnapped again, that's a different story, because that's just
sure.
Like, that's just part of the plot. But like, if it's something they got to pen into their character sheet, and now they have to use the white out to get rid of it. Like, that's rough. So like, so I don't think it's that big of a difference to flavor wise say like, oh, they got training from their old master, so now they get a +1 to their unarmed strike or something.
Okay. So you're saying, like, instead of giving them a sword that they might not care about, you could give them like a +1 bonus to one of their natural abilities.
Yeah.
That would serve the same purpose, but story wise would be not just like a physical thing you're giving them.
Right.
I like that idea. And you made me think of two other things as well. And actually, sorry, I'll set those two things aside for a second. One thing that fits what you were just saying, so we've mentioned the black egg several times. I know you just mentioned it a couple episodes ago. We've mentioned it a long, long time ago too. For anybody who maybe hasn't listened to those older episodes, the black egg was the name of an adventure module in Dungeon Magazine that I've played through twice. I played through once as my character Saythorn. I played through it along with my friend Chris, who I've mentioned before. It was run by our mutual friend Melissa, and it was a notoriously deadly adventure. It was, I think, all of us party members died at some point in the adventure, but we each had like a free true res or something, and it was notoriously difficult. And then later on, we played through it again because Jay, having he was in that campaign as well. He ran the adventure. He sprung that adventure on us in the Eberron campaign he was running, and he forced me to go through it again. And it was awful both times. But the first time we went through the Black Egg, it was a harrowing, difficult adventure. But at the end of the adventure, we were all given some sort of reward that is kind of like what you're talking about, Jeff. In particular, Jay's character, who was like a kind of like a monk fighter, multi-class kind of. He was a prestige class that he was a monk that was like toughening his skin to be tough like armor.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up getting some sort of kind of just like a permanent buff to a couple of his things. Like story-wise, his character got this like emblem burnt into his forehead, I think.
Okay.
And from that point on, the emblem was basically a permanent magic item that gave him, I don't remember exactly what, but it gave him bonuses that could have otherwise been a magic item that someone handed to him. But instead it was much more personal because it was his deity basically was like granting him this ability through this symbol on his forehead.
Yeah.
So that is a good idea that you had. But that made me think of two other things that you can use to motivate a player. When you first were talking about, a +1 sword or whatever that isn't a +1 sword, that got me thinking, what if you did give them a +1 sword, but since they're not necessarily motivated by loot or money, the +1 sword is just a +1 sword, but the sword has a map drawn on it. Or something like that. Like the sword has either a map or has like text scrawled on the handle, and then you can translate it, and then that leads to another quest. Basically, treat a magic item not just as, oh, cool, +1 sword, but it's like, no, this is a bit of world building that this is going to lead you to your next quest.
Sure.
So even if just having a +1 sword might not interest you, the intrigue of finding a sword that has a treasure map etched into the blade, that might be interesting to that character as well.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another idea for giving a player something that isn't necessarily tied to loot or money or an item is if you know that, kind of going with our previous question, if you know that they're interested in being, I don't know, a warlock or something like that, but they aren't planning on multiclassing, give them a warlock class ability, once per day or something like that as a reward in place of a magic item. If they've been watching the party wizard, use prestidigitation every now and then, and they're like, oh man, if only I could cast prestidigitation. Well, at the end of this adventure, they're granted a magical boon of now you can cast prestidigitation once in a while.
Sure.
So you can go out if the players are not motivated by the things that the game kind of puts in front of them by default, you can go outside of the rules and you can come up with rewards that will still interest them, hopefully, even if it doesn't fit the framework of the rules as it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. And besides that, like, again, the more like role play side rewards, the like getting like, property or like a house or something like that, or, social status in the town or something like that. Or, if they like more emotional things, you could get them a boyfriend or girlfriend or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Adding NPCs that revolve around your character is really cool. It's always really fun when part of the story involves your character, when, part of just the interaction with NPCs. Anytime you get your time in the spotlight as part of the game is really cool. So if you're not motivated by treasure or items or whatever, you'll hopefully be motivated by story or a quest or character interaction. If you aren't motivated by those, what are you even playing the game for?
Yeah. It's like, maybe they just really like animals. So you give them more like, more pet animal companions, like not, they don't fight with them, but it's like maybe they like cats and they just want a lot of cats, and so you just give their character a bunch of kittens.
Make a mini game out of the downtime activities they're doing between adventures.
Sure. Yeah.
Anything that just shows that you are trying to involve the player will hopefully go noticed and hopefully will engage the player more. But I mean, hey, Peace or Pancakes, I feel ya. Motivating players is difficult. Sometimes you just think it'll be plain and simple. They'll just go do this thing. Sometimes they're not interested. So good luck, I guess. But hopefully we've given some ideas that might interest the players you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for today. But we do still have our social media questions. Our last social media question was, what fantasy RPG environment, such as dungeon, forest, urban, underwater, etc., which one is your favorite and why? Do you recall what your answer was, Jeff?
I think I was cheating and saying dungeon just because like a dungeon could be themed in so many different ways. But I mean, like, I think I want to say like a forest or a jungle or something like that.
Okay.
I think I like jungles because it also makes me think of like, because you could have like, there could be a very like really deep, dark jungle or a kind of a swampy jungle, or, sometimes there are like, I'm always thinking of like Mayan temple kind of ruins and stuff in a jungle or something like that. I don't know. I like it. Or it could be like a jungle that's on an island or something. So like there's some variety there, but you're still, you still got the nice towering trees, a kind of aesthetic to it. I like it.
Yeah. I think I said dungeon as well, but I was thinking more of like abandoned city, that sort of thing. Just stuff where there's like traps and secret doors and whatnot.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think you expressed a concern that maybe dungeon would be the easy answer. So maybe a lot of our listeners would say dungeon. Actually, what listeners said might surprise you.
Okay.
Number 4
is crazy.
We actually didn't get very many responses though, but there were a couple that it's like, I wasn't expecting that to be a running theme. So over on Facebook, Ryan P says, I like the idea of magical forest teeming with life and hazards. So forests in the Feywild, which I think is pretty cool. That's definitely a good one. The DM's Council says, I find that the underwater realms are vastly underexplored. They're also vastly underwater.
Okay.
Boat travel and all that it entails, pirates, land hopping, ship battles, etc. is fun, but the murky depths are I think they said ripe. I think they meant rife. I think it could be maybe both are ripe with potential and fascinating dangers. Those are both pretty good. Not too many on Facebook. Just got one on Reddit. Alstar the Minotaur says, as a player, I usually play a tanky character. Playing in a dungeon is generally my favorite because there are often numerous choke points where I can become a veritable 300 style Spartan wall, holding back enemies while my allies pick them off one by one.
Nice.
As a DM, I love urban environments. There's such a variety of encounters and puzzles I can utilize on top of the absurd cast of NPCs I can conjure up as shopkeepers, nobles, commoners, and vagrants.
Yeah, that's true. Like, you can pull anybody from the side of the road and just, throw them into whatever encounter is going on.
Yeah, pretty much. We did not get any on Twitter. And over on Discord, Dustin says, I have to go with cities, whether they are treetop, stone, cavernous, or a sea. Every other environment can have encounters or battles, but a city can do so much more. They allow politics, socialization, trading, performances, lore building, etc. There's an entire campaign just set in Waterdeep, levels 1 through 20 in one environ. Try to do that in any other environ, and it starts to grind to a crawl, especially in a dungeon. Yeah, that's true.
The 100, what is it? The 100 level dungeon?
The world's largest dungeon.
World's largest dungeon?
Yeah. There is in 3rd edition, there was the world's largest dungeon, which was a level 1 through 20 dungeon. But that, that in of itself had to take special measures to be interesting and work as such a big dungeon.
Yeah.
It's kind of the whole gimmick of the thing. The Beverage Tea says, no way, Jose, give me a mountainous forest. It's all natural, and it is all the time. This probably stems from my traumatic outdoorsing misadventures with my father as a teen. The mountains and forests are dangerous AF, and now all that danger translates into adventure areas to be safely explored in theater of the mind. Yeah, there you go.
I could see that. Griff has a story about him and his wife going hiking in a mountain and getting lost, and it got dark, and then they came across a bear.
Okay,
it's like some stuff that I don't know if I would have survived, but luckily he had the right instincts and was like, okay, we got to go. He knew how to get away from a bear in the correct way, I guess. So I don't know what I would do if I just came across a bear. I'd probably panic. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Floofy Shoob says plane hopping. I like the variety. And yeah, that's a good answer. That's pretty varied. And plane hopping can mean just about anything, but
yeah,
I would love me a good plane hopping campaign. Wizards of the Coast, please make a Planescape campaign.
Gabe,
sorry, I have
okay?
this weird
you got
cough.
a cough? What's going on?
I hope I don't have COVID.
Oh gosh.
Stiltskin Koopo 84 says, I like the thought of a small cluster of towns with brief but dense wilderness between them. It's one of the main reasons I'm excited to play a Rime of the Frost Maiden game in the future. There are something like a dozen settlements in an icy wilderness to go between. I kind of want to discover a setting with milder climates and a collection of maybe 3 to 7 kingdoms laid out across a continent in a rough circle. I'd rather duck in and out of various civilizations than go on a prolonged quest into the unsettled frontier. Though plane hopping from city to city sounds fun too. Yeah. Debrasaur says, I absolutely love the old trope of exploring ancient buried ruins that run deep underground.
Yeah.
And then Collins B says, ever since I saw Treasure Planet as a kid, the answer has always been space. I didn't start playing D&D until after I found out what Spelljammer was and have been eating up the crumbs of that setting that have been scattered in 5th edition. Once the sky is no longer the limit for the players, so many possibilities open up. One player likes the idea of a new setting that came out. Go fly there. Fantasy space battles, weird aliens, strange magic and technology, all my jam. And then Dustin and Collins B went back and forth with GIFs about space.
Good.
So, yeah. So I kind of, before I realized those GIFs were all from the same 2 people, but I thought there were just several people that wanted space-based stuff. But
gotcha.
So anyway, so I made a joke earlier about there being a theme.
Oh, no, there was a few people being cities.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that was our last social media question. Thank you everybody who wrote in. Our next social media question is, do the characters you play tend to all have a common quirk or trait? If so, what is that quirk or trait? With Jeff, it's that they don't have names.
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah. Yeah, I'll take it. That'll be my answer. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they a lot of times are without names for the first level or 2.
Sure. For me, I would love to say that no, because I always try to play characters that are different from whatever the previous character I played. However, I'm sure that there are some common denominators that I'm not aware of because I'm too close.
Right? Yeah. That's that's basically how I feel as well.
When I was typing up this question, what came to mind immediately was that at least when we used to play together, our friend Jay, he was on our podcast like a little over a year ago, I think. He tended to always play characters that were like very heroic and, like lawful good, generally speaking, or not necessarily lawful good, but like always very good, very altruistic. And, it just seemed like anytime I was playing with Jay, I had a pretty good idea that he was going to be playing like the frontline hero character. And, I don't know if he still does. It's been a long time since I've played in person, especially with Jay. But, that's one common trait that I would say a lot of people probably have because, you're playing D&D usually to be heroic and brave and so on.
Right. Yeah. My mental image of him is him in his Superman t-shirt. So
pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, something like that. If any of you have any common traits or quirks that, show up in your character's lot, or anyone that does. Again, maybe you're too close to notice your own quirks and such. So
sure,
yeah. All right, well, I think that'll do it for our questions for today. So before we close out, let's wind down a little bit. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember those who have come before us, who have given their lives so that we may have a better world to live in, as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. We have a very short funeral pyre today, submitted by Jasco Gomad on Reddit.
It's so short, I already read it.
Yeah. First character death. Rolled a wizard, 1 hit point. First encounter, cast magic missile, died.
Let's go, no.
Yeah.
That's rough, dude.
That is rough. Especially, I'm assuming that was from an earlier edition where you didn't get max hit points at level 1 and so on. Or
right.
Maybe not, I don't know. But yeah, it was not uncommon for wizards to have 1 single hit point.
Yep.
So
it's like something like magic missile where it's like you're guaranteed to take damage.
Yeah.
Well, guess you're dead.
Yeah, there you go. So I guess let's raise a glass in memory of Jasko Gomad's character. As we say, sucks to be you, I guess. Clink. Play a better character next time.
All right, play a different edition, I guess.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Reddit. We're on our Interparty Discord. We're on Twitter at InPartyConflict. Check those out for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on the podcatcher of your choice. We are on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you download podcasts. Please leave us a rating or review. Please subscribe or just tell a friend. If you want to support the show monetarily, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. We have a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where you can watch us play video games, or you can join me over at twitch.tv/tiltedturtle to watch me play games live.
There you go. Also, head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show, what you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games, from Nameless to Hackers RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
Gabe, does the podcast have the requirements to multi-class into magazine?
I can tell you right now, no, it doesn't.
Okay.